Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fun episode of 1000 Gurus with me, your host, J.R. Yonocruz. I'm recording this intro on January 5th, back into the new year. This is probably going to be like mid to late February when you guys hear this episode, so hopefully your year is going well. I absolutely love this episode. We were finally able to get Rani back on the show. He was Guru number 1 on episode number 1, and this is now season 7. 67 episodes later, so this is episode 68. We get into some very hilarious topics and also some intellectually deep topics. Disclaimer, this is one of those 1000 Gurus episodes to not take too seriously, as is the case whenever I have some of my closest friends on the show. We talk about his career pivot into software engineering and how he managed to get a job 4 months out of his boot camp. So we're picking up right where we left off from episode 1 when he said he was going into that field. We talk about his thoughts on Japan and traveling internationally, his changing views on slowly becoming conservative and having an issue with pronouns. We talk about self-care, the 10 different types of friends you can have, a discussion on male covert depression from a book that I read recently, Rani's love life, and then a discussion on our own personal red flags. I really enjoyed this very wide-ranging and unserious conversation, and I hope you do too. So without further ado, please enjoy this semi-random show episode featuring my friend Rani. Hello and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Rani, welcome back to the show.
Oh, hello. It's been a while. Pleasure to be back.
Yeah, it's been a long while actually. So we were talking about this off camera or off recording, but so obviously viewers should know you were the first guest on the show, episode 1, and now you're back for season 7, episode 68. So we've come a long way. I'm actually really happy to have you come back because we were in studio. Obviously, we're remote now, but to have you experience what the show is like, how it's different, how it's pretty much the same, running it back, getting your life updates. Obviously, this is like a selfish project of mine, so I can talk with my friends like in a structured way and force them to book time. So yeah, and we're going to do a semi-random show format. So we have some topics that we talked about off camera and maybe go into some random topics after that. But I will go into life updates and your new career where we left off in the last episode. So TLDR, like, what have you been up to, man?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much. I'm excited to be back over here. I've been following, obviously, 1000 Gurus since I was the first person here, and it's grown so much. Obviously, a variety of topics, and I think the biggest thing that I wanted to make sure that I'm able to do as well is just be able to talk more, because being your friend for so long, we've been able to have just a variety of topics that we could easily go into. Topic, an update since my first time being here. Number 1, last time I was here, I was on my way to New York to become a software engineer. And now I have a software engineer job and a role. So I am, I did that whole shebang, which was a very interesting thing. But I will say, just going back to what I was, the transcripts, or going back to our first episode, yeah, I think I still follow the same things, which is sometimes you just got to do things and keep going at it until, until things happen. So that's where I'm at. I've been in my role for almost a year now. And in the middle of that, I've just been traveling, learning more about life and being able to experience more new experiences, essentially. So, yeah, excited to be here. Excited to talk about very cool things. What have you been up to recently?
Well, we'll get into this, but I think the biggest thing is just my trip from Japan. A trip in Japan, for 2 weeks, was a lot of fun. It was planned. I feel like at this point it's going to be an annual trip. I've gone there almost every year for the last couple of years, or last few years, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, show's going strong. 7th season. We're pre-recording this. This will probably come out in March because I'm trying to get all of season 7 done before the new year starts. And so
Sweet.
It's just so nice to have 10 episodes in the backlog, so I never have to worry about that. But yeah, it's been a very grateful last year, 2025, of the show. I have a recap episode coming out in the first week of January, just kind of my whole journey and all my lessons learned. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I wanted to ask you about now, I guess, more career type stuff, but going through the boot camp, sort of this career pivot, and now being in your field for about a year or so, was that easy? Was it hard? I'm sure there are non-zero people in the audience listening and be like, wait, should I go into software development? Should I do boot camp? So what is your your sample size of one, your experience that you'd like to give to the audience.
Jeez. Okay. So I my
Super
experience has
easy, right?
been
Do it.
has been
Everyone should
actually
do it.
crazy. Yeah, everyone should totally do it. Look, I'm not going to sit here and not say that like I am like not lucky. Like unfortunately, like the time that we're like recording this in this episode, like just how the environment has been. There's been a lot of layoffs. There's been a lot of, especially in the tech industry is hard. It really is. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I went to a boot camp and became the best boot camper. And next thing you know, I immediately got a job, because that was not the case at all. At the same time, I will say that the one thing that I've learned, just like what I've learned with everything else that I've been doing, is that, it's the times that are the hardest that define you just a little bit more as a person. I like, you know, my story is not unique. I went to a boot camp thinking that the next month I'm going to get a job. Well, the next month was the holidays. And then next thing you know, no one is obvious. No HR person is like available. And then next thing you know, layoffs are coming. So now there's fresh new grads that are coming in. And so then what do you do? What do you like as a person? Well, like for me, it's very easy. I could be like, I got my business. I could pivot towards there. Or I've had experience in my finance role. I could go back there, but I'm a stubborn person. I don't know what else to say. And I think my stubbornness sometimes is what gets me to the things that like ultimately like what I want. Again, like I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a perfect person, that like I did everything that I could and somehow like I'm the best applicant out there. However, and so there is some luck. However, I think that for me, it was just like the continuous persistence on my end that I wanted to be able to do that got me to where I'm at now. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So I get the mindset stuff, but what exactly happened? What did you do? And what factors led to where you are right now? Besides luck and hard work and all this stuff, like what actually happened?
Got it. Okay. So this is, yeah, I'll tell you, it was very interesting. November, I ended my boot camp. I got this quote unquote certification that makes you think that you're like cool. November hits, and then December, there's a freeze of any hiring whatsoever. And then it's okay because you get to spend time with family and get to relax. January hits. I'm applying, and no one wants to see my resume that just says fresh out of boot camp, because they've dealt with boot campers before. This is not the 2017, 2016 thing where anyone who gets out of there immediately gets a job and they're okay with training. No, like people gotten more sophisticated. There's AI that came out. It's just harder competition. So what I did was, hey, I did my dailies. I did my discipline of like several algos a day, try to create a project, talk about my project. I actually created a website for me to just explain my like how I was learning things. And, sooner or later, I tried all different routes. This isn't one of those like I'm gonna go to LinkedIn. I reached out to people on a call. I called the companies personally and be like, let me talk to your HR department. I went on like Y Combinator and see if any series funding that's about to boom is looking for their newest engineer, And so I did all of those things. I've gotten some initial screening, and only to come to realize that I need to be better. I need to make myself stand out more. And so I grinded like it sounds like, again, like my experience is unique, but it was quite literally a rigorous grind, because sometimes when you're applying for things or when you're applying for a software engineering role, there's so many avenues that you could go about. And if you don't have any experience on any one of them, it's just like the whole thing about being a jack of all trades. Oh, I could do a little bit of front end. I could do a little bit of back end. Like, well, what do you need? Like, you need to be a more specific thing. And so, yeah, it's honing in on the core tools or technology that I learned. It's getting repetitive practice, and then it's trying to showcase it in a way where someone is okay with talking to me as a new person. And then that's how I got my interviews and nailed it. Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do? Meaning like you're saying, okay, I was grinding, but like specifically, what did you learn? What did you do? What did you say? What jobs did you apply for? Like that, like the tactical stuff. Yeah.
So the first things first that made me helped me land the job was target companies that don't do algorithms. Like
What do you mean by
that was
don't? What do you mean by target companies that don't do algorithms?
so in software engineering companies, there's a lot of like sometimes you get a baseline of like how they pre-screen you or they get you your first interview. Some of them there's two different paths. One of them is through like, hey, can you solve this algorithm of like, or create this algorithm that you're doing, right? That's one way. And then if you do decent and if you are okay with it, they put you on to the next step, right? And then the second part of it is, here's a take-home project. Let's see how well you could do this. And so for me, my tactical thing was like, well, my algorithm is okay, but I know for a fact that I will freeze in a 20-minute like time scramble. If they give me a project to be able to do where I can showcase like how much effort I can put in an X amount of time and show like a full design, essentially, I think that I have a better chance. And truthfully, that's exactly what happened. The three applications that I was even getting an initial interview for I initially got like an algorithm interview and like none of them passed me. Not because eventually I knew how to do it, but at that time it was very, very difficult when like someone is like have it time ticking in your, you know what I mean, in front of you. And you're just like, oh, I need to know this by heart, right? Versus, hey, here's a project. Here is something that we're trying to build. Let's see how you build it yourself and design it. And so in two applications that I was able to submit like an actual project base, that's when I got forward into the next series of questioning. So that's the first part. The second part that I actually did that I realized I actually needed to do was actually hire a resume builder person.
Mm.
And the reason behind it is very simple. Like number one, again, being in business for an entrepreneur, it like what do I say? I'm a managing partner. Now I want to be an employee for like a software engineering role. Completely like different mindset. Number two, again, relevant experience. It's like how do I finesse saying that I've had all these finance roles and the next thing you know, I'm like becoming an engineer, right? I'm trying to eliminate all the things so that I could even decently be like a upfront person so that they could say like, hey, I have the technical skills to be able to land this job. And then the last thing that I definitely did, that I continuously did, like throughout the entire time, was just like ultimately like this is the discipline of like continuously following up with the person, even though they were telling me that they'll let me know later. The reason why I actually got this job was because of the fact. I'm sorry. No,
Being
it wasn't even
persistent.
about persistent. It was the fact that I guess it is persistence. Yeah. I kept bugging them and said like, hey, what is an update? Are you going to hire me or not? So, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I have a handful of follow-ups. So, going back to the interview of the practical application, like the tests, so you're saying that there is like an in-person timed algorithm test. As a technical person, or as a non-technical person, I don't really know what that means. Like, is that a back end? Is that front end? And then, but I understand that sometimes they'll give you take-home projects to do. But could you like break down for us non-technical people, like what do you mean by algorithm tests? And then how did you pass along to the next phase after that?
Great. Yes. So what a lot of initial screeners do is, again, there's thousands of applicants. Sometimes what they do in the very beginning is that they give you this like pre-assessment. What this pre-assessment does is they say like, hey, can you, like what an algorithm also, at least for me, my experience is like what an algorithm ultimately shows is that like, hey, are you able to think logically so that you could get to the answer in the most logical way? Like that's how algorithms are designed to be able to do, are designed to be able to take in. And so sometimes when they're like within an algorithm, like I'll give you an example. They're going to say, write a function that given how many apples, I want you to, because if you put it in this function, now you have like 5 apples, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, sometimes it's like, it's like, that's a very easy way of like describing it and probably not the best way of describing it.
Sure, sure.
But
Yeah.
sometimes like you trip up and they're like, oh, like this is not the most efficient way of doing things. Like you could say like, okay, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could say 1 times 5 equals 5. Here you go. Like
Sure, sure.
here's your apple. That's one way of doing it. The second half of it is this whole project oriented thing where it's designed for you to think, at least in my opinion, in a very bigger scope of lens. They're not telling you, hey, how can you create a function? They're going to tell you, create me a business plan to map out like an event for a user who wants to buy like a jacket all the way to the end point of actually purchasing it, and you know what I mean, and sending that over, right? Full scope, like that requires, you know, like a methodical process, like from start to finish, as
More like an
opposed to say
end-to-end, yeah, end-to-end like skill set perspective and building that whole thing out, right?
exactly.
Okay.
And so for me, the fact that maybe it's because of the fact that I have a little bit more longer time with projects, I was able to really hone in on the skills of what makes that like better, as opposed to like a very timed, here's 20 minutes, figure out how to do 1 times 5 in this thing. And if you don't, they either say yes or no. If you don't get it 100%, well, guess what? There's 100 other people that got 100%. So you're already in the bucket of the no. That's how come I don't pass those things. Yeah.
Okay. I get it. So it's more of like correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like it's more of a technical focus on one sort of thing, like create a script, an algorithm, a function to do this sort of thing. And that sort of in-person test is very difficult. Obviously, you're like a new software engineer, but then if you're asked to do like a take-home project that's more of like an end-to-end build this thing or proof of concept, that was a little bit more feasible for you. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think the reason why is because of the fact that boot camps nowadays, going back to it, boot camps nowadays, that's what they teach you. Like majority of it is because they realize that algorithms you could learn by yourself through your own time, and then you take yourself under pressure. But what a bootcamp really does is prepare you for the real life application of, here is a feature that's needed. How do you implement this into this small piece of like a website? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Like rather than just here, let me teach you skills how to be a cog. If you're a little bit more valuable, if you can understand the overarching thing, and then you can dig into the small technical things as you can. But a boot camp isn't going to like drill in every single technical skill into you, because that wouldn't be practical anyways. But that makes sense. Okay. So then the other two parts where you're saying is you outsourced the resume applying thing of like getting a resume writer or resume builder. And then the other thing was that you just bugged them until they got back to you, which I think is interesting because you're saying, yeah, the technical skills, like I had enough of it, but really I just did the other like brute force to get the job, which is cool. Well, hold on. So yeah, now, okay. So I don't know if you know this, but do you have an idea of like how long it took you, and then how many jobs did you apply for? I want to like get some sort of hard numbers there from your
Great.
experience.
I applied, I believe, closer to 60 like applications before I even got only like a handful of like interviews, to which only 2 of them got to the next step. And then next thing you know, and then I landed my job.
Time frame?
I outsourced. It took me like, I would say probably 4 months after like post boot camp, 4 or 5 months post my boot
Okay.
camp.
Okay, cool. And the other thing is like, were there, in your process of applying for these 60-ish jobs, were there industries, fields, companies you were aiming towards? Were there any, not deal breakers, but things you were filtering out of like, okay, I'm not looking for these jobs, I'm looking for these types of jobs or these types of companies or areas or whatever? Was there any of those considerations at all?
Yes, but not because of a filtering, but more so process oriented. The way that I broke it down actually is because there's so many companies, sometimes that you know, or sometimes that you don't know. Like I broke it down per day exactly what type of industry I was going to apply for and what type of small, medium, or large size company I'm going to apply for. So there's, for example, on a Monday, I would only apply to like fintech companies, right? On Tuesday, I would aim for like Series A funding companies, or I would aim for like mid-sized companies. Like those are the different types of filters that I would go for, because in the truth is that a resume is not like a catch-all. Like I have to actually like, yes, there is like the overall like resume is a thing, but I have always had to cater each and every single resume every time I applied. So depending on what that need is. And it's not even about technical skills. It's exactly how you approach it. If you are applying for a bigger company, they care about like big achievements that you've made. If you're applying for a small company, they want you to list like how many things you've done in a very short amount of time, so that they could see that like, oh, okay, I could grow fast with this person. So it's like, it's that type of like technical thinking, at least that I had to approach it as when I was applying.
That makes sense. So you were batching and grouping them based on like similar categories of businesses or things like that because you're tailoring your resume and it makes sense to like, all right, now it's tailored more towards fintech or now it's tailored more towards mid-sized companies or whatever. So it was more just like that sort of consideration, not necessarily like filtering out like, oh, I'm not trying to work for this or this. It was just part of your process.
I applied all the way to like South Carolina to get a job. And if they wanted me
Oh, and
to
so
go,
locations too, right? Yeah.
exactly. If they wanted me to go all the way there and be there, I would have been there in a heartbeat immediately. Because sometimes, it's true. It's like your first one is the only one that matters, and then next thing you know, it'll get you to where you need to go. I was willing to make that
Yeah, yeah.
sacrifice to be like, okay, if I'm not going to be in California because it's tough, that's okay.
Yeah,
Give me
yeah,
to
yeah.
Texas. Give me to South
Mm.
Carolina.
Okay, how long was your boot camp again?
3 months, 3.5
Okay,
months.
so 3.5 months, and then the job applying situation was like 4-ish months, you said.
Yes.
And then how did you find your resume builder and like how much did they cost? I don't know if you want to give any of that information away, but like I'm curious because that seems like also a significant part of this story, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. My resume built, there was actually two that I did, but the one that actually took a deep dive that I've gotten counseling for and things of that nature, it was surprisingly free for me. And the reason why is because my old company, my former company had this program where they were actually like, they wanted you to be able to like use this third party, like if you need a resume builder. And it just so happened that I took that opportunity and it was still available. And that's exactly what I did. So they paired me up with like a headhunter. They showed me exactly like what things to look for. They made me do this sort of like format that's like good for like HR, like department and things of that nature. And so
Mm.
I got all the templates that they wanted me to be able to do and go from there. But yeah, I was very lucky in that sense that I got it for free to be able
So
to
you
do
said
that.
your old company, was it an old corporate job or what do you
It was
trying
an
to figure
old
out where?
corporate job. I had an underwriting company like prior to this that I was helping with consultation. And
Oh, okay,
so,
okay. Yeah.
mhm.
Okay,
And
so
so
you were
they
still
were,
kind of working with them, but they were offering that. Or
yes.
gotcha, gotcha.
I left the company, but they extended that thing to me because I'm very close with
Hmm.
someone there. Yep.
Okay, so then do you have any advice now for the general public on how to find their own resume builder services or what's applicable or what is available to them? Any thoughts?
Yes. My actual advice and thoughts of it is that you it's better for you, in my opinion, to continuously look for different sources rather than one person. Because
Mm.
the truth of the matter is that there is, again, there, like, it sounds terrible to say, but there is no like one like true combination of things. And sometimes what works for others doesn't like work for you. But being able to take in a grain of salt with like a solid foundation, you know what I mean? Like from one helps a lot, like cater towards that, because then you become like, the truth is that your resume is a storyteller of yourself. And so they'll give you the tools and tooling of how to present, how to tell your story, but the ultimate person who knows how to tell your story the best is you. You know what I mean? So again, it's like someone is going to tell me as an advice, okay, this is how you should structure like how you want to show your achievement. But they can't put words into me and saying
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
this is exactly how I achieve.
Okay, so I get that's good advice is always like get multiple sources of advice in that sense. Do you have any place you would like to direct people on where to find a good resume writer? Any places you would recommend? Because again, I know you
Uh,
got yours for free, but do you,
there
for the sake of
is
like
a
giving people, like a direction, they're like, that sounds great, Ronnie. You got a free resume writer. Where do I find mine? What do you
there,
recommend?
there is a free one. I will say that I think did really well for me actually, because they give you a score afterwards. It is
Hmm.
resume.io.
Resume.io. Okay.
Resume.io, it is there is some sort of algorithm like behind it. So again, that's why you don't take it like for a full grain of salt, but they give you a true breakdown of like on a percentage scorecard, like how you rank
Hmm.
amongst like the rest of the ones that have been submitted. So I would say that. I think the sign-in cost, I think I paid like $20 like a month when I had it as a subscription. And I did it for one full month, and then that was that. I was like, okay, I got all the sources that I need, and then go from there. So
Okay,
that's what I
cool. So
would
that
say.
you used it, you would recommend it, and it's like you used it for a month, and that was like enough for you to like get you to where you needed.
Exactly. Because that gives you, again, a structure, and then everyone else,
A good starting
aka
point.
either your friends or colleagues from the same industry, will help you out, or like actual career professionals will help you out as well. You take a little bit from
Cool.
each one inside. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Great advice. Okay, let's pivot if you're okay with that, unless you had anything else
Yeah.
on career, but I wanted to go to travel. Is that cool?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay, so we talked about this before the recording of, so you came back recently from vacation and other things around Asia. You specifically mentioned Japan, Philippines, and Thailand. And like I mentioned, I just came back from Japan for 2 weeks. And so you have these thoughts on, now that you have this perspective of going to these different cultures, things that are same or different, and you had some observations. Would you like to dig into anything that comes top of mind first?
Yeah. And I think this, to me, I'm so glad that you've said that you visited Japan like 4 times. That's why I actually was very curious about your experience, because this was my very first time in Japan. Big, obviously, just like anything else, it's a culture shock. Aside from the fact that like I have to calm myself and realize that not everything is anime, like anime
Well,
there.
no, it
But
definitely is. Everything is anime. What are you talking about? I got on the subway and I'm like, is there an anime playing? No, I'm just kidding. That's
yeah. No, yeah. So I was there like actually for a week. I was there for a wedding, but I only visited one place, and it was Osaka. And again, with my limited experience, it was very intriguing. I personally like to people watch when I go to when I travel to new places. And so for me, I think the biggest thing that I was able to realize there sometimes is they're very, at least from my experience, Japan is very process oriented. It's like, to them, if it defies what the process is, it is like, it's almost like no longer functioning, like, or like it can't happen. Like the process is there, and I'm sure that it was
So it's
there
like rigid
and continuously built there. Yes, it's so rigid that anything like that's a tangent from it is very like, it's like very hyper aware, like type of thing, and it's like almost non-functioning. Or like feels like it's like, no, like it's like that can't happen.
Like you broke the system, yeah.
Exactly. I'll give a very explicit story, right? I was sitting at a diner, local diner, nothing fancy. The place, or the diner, looks like what Overcooked looks like, which is very like square. In the middle of it is where the staff is in the kitchen. They're never outside. You go in, you sit down, like perfectly cool meal. The register is on the left side. I sit on the right side. It's okay, perfectly fine. Normally, what you would, or at least with my perspective of what an assumption is, where something is very customer service centric, where it's like the customer is always right, like that idea of customer is always right, is that everything is like catered to the customer. Over there, it's like, in order for me to pay for my bill, I would have to go around my seat, go across, go to the opposite side, and go to where the cash register is, and then pay there, like knowing that the person is going to be there. As opposed to, if this is a square circle, the service just turns around, grabs my information, pays, and then like, dumps it back on my table, and like that was good to go. I'm not complaining. It's a mere observation that I was just like, wow, I wonder, like, to me, it was like the biggest, like, my thing about it was like, like, I wonder if they think that like on a busy day, is that always going to be the process no matter what, because they think that that's the most efficient, or they never thought of just handing like the service like to the person that you're seating at, right?
Like the bill, like the check.
Yeah, the check or the bill. Like, yeah, again, like, like if you were to design something that's very customer centric, or like the customer is always right type of thing, it's like, oh yeah, please, here's the bill. Oh, like, thank you so much. Going from there. I'll give a different example. In the Philippines, it's the same. It's sort of the same thing when I visited there. Like, yes, I have the privilege that I am like Filipino American, so I could talk in Filipino Tagalog, but to a tourist that would come that doesn't know Tagalog as much, my experience is that they would genuinely try to service a person that can't speak like their native language. It's very like catering towards there. My observation during my trip in Japan was that I like there's times where like I saw a nice local food area place where I would try my hardest in terms of like actually trying to speak like the language, but it comes to a point where they're just like looking at me and they're just like this is much more of a hassle and I could get more customers that could easily like that I could service more rather than try to help you out. Like, it's okay. Completely different viewpoint that I experienced. I'm not here to judge whether one is better than the other, but it was just like, to me, I was just like, oh, like that's interesting. Right.
Yeah, like that's how it is. Two questions. What was that second place? Like, what type of restaurant or business was that where they were like, "Oh, this I'm not going to try to help this guy out." And second, were there specific words you were trying to use or phrases? I'm just curious.
I was just trying to look for like it was a pub. I will say, like,
Okay.
that's first and foremost. It
Like
was
a bar, pub.
Yeah, like a bar,
beer?
pub, like, yeah,
Okay,
bar,
okay.
pub. Like it was like it was like a nightlife type of like location type of thing.
Okay. Okay.
It was to be to their own right, and to be fair, it was like fairly like full, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
But for me, again, like, difficult time. I was trying to do hand gestures. I was trying like my most, like, you know what I mean, like
I wanted you to say, "Oh yeah, I busted out all of my anime language." I said Rasengan and I said Chidori, and they didn't give me anything.
Yeah, I was like that. I was like, no, I was, I, and then
I was like, "This is why you're not getting service. It's freaking racist. That's why." Damn.
I was
Okay.
telling them that's my ninja
Yeah.
way, and they just didn't understand it.
Okay, I can see where your problem is now. I see where your problem is.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'll
Okay.
give a last example. I'll give another final example. I went to a bar restaurant where the seating, like the seating that they have reserved for like a long chair table, is for like 6 people, right? At max. Thing is that like us, if you go to a Denny's or like a diner's like pub, like you could make that 6 to like 8 people. Like, I've been working out. I'm not that big. Like, I could squeeze in, you know what I mean, to a seat. But the thing is that, and like I saw that, and I was there, because I came in late because I was trying to look for directions. It's clearly like everything was terrible. My first time there. I was trying to get directions, and then the table was full because they were only able to sit like 6 people. And I'm like, "Hey, can I sit there?" And they looked at me like, "No, like only 6." And I'm like, "No, but like I could squeeze in." And they're like, "No, that's not how it works." And I'm just like, I was like, "Oh, like, interesting." As opposed to over here, it's like, yeah, like, join in. Like, you guys are gonna feel uncomfortable. That's fine. That's on you. But like, sure, you can squeeze in. To them, they're like, this max 6. That's it. It's 6. You know what I mean? You could do your shadow clone jutsu and we'll only take 6 people still. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That makes sense. I think that based on your stories and your experience, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't even think you're wrong in that sense. So here, let me tell you my stories, or a couple of stories that's like the similar point, right? So you've been to Kura Sushi, right? Like the revolving sushi?
Yes.
And so have you tried Sushiro there? Like Sushi RO? Or I've heard of it? So it's similar to Kura, but it's like there's no revolving, but it is a conveyor belt. So you like order on the screen and it shoots out to you in like a couple minutes, something, right? And so my friend was asking like, "Hey, he was asking a local, like, "Hey, where do Japanese people eat sushi? Because I'm trying to try sushi," right? And he's like, "Oh, we all just go to Sushiro." And he's like, "Okay." So he tried it. obviously, well, one point is that the food is really cheap there. So a meal that cost me like $40 at Kura is only going to cost me like 14 at Sushiro or Kura, which is crazy. But the thing is, it was completely hands off, meaning like I didn't talk to a single person there. And I will say that to my preferences, that is preferred, right? Because I went to the kiosk, put in like seated person of one, sit at the bar wherever is available. I turned around and then I got called immediately, even though it was like a 2 hour wait because they had an open bar seating. So I sat down, it gave me a ticket, told me where to sit. I had the whole sushi thing with the whole tablet, finished my meal in like 30, 40 minutes, whatever. And then when I checked out, it shot out a ticket, or no, sorry, I didn't shoot. I used my existing ticket and went to like a kiosk in the corner, paid it, and then just left. And so that experience was like very seamless from a like from a process efficiency sort of thing, because there's no way I could have gone in and out at such a busy location if I had to not do any of those sort of automated self-service things, which to me in the moment, because I'm hungry and I'm trying to get my sushi at a good price, it was fantastic, right? But I can see how if I needed some help, and actually I did spill something and some other lady next to me had to ask for extra napkins because they don't give really good napkins. So yeah, to your point, I did have that same experience, but everything else was like, okay, this makes sense to me. But I think it makes sense when you consider, and now this is a macro observation of a culture's what they're putting on a pedestal of like their values. And I think in Japan, they're all about the efficiency in the process, like we're both saying. And so they have to, I think it was a conscious decision to remove those sort of customer service points like you would get at like a local diner in like the Midwest or something, where it's one person, a personable sort of experience. Whereas if they automated all of this, they can get more people in and out, and then their workers can focus on doing those sort of tasks that make more sense to them so that they can do more volume and be more efficient. And if the Japanese people are used to that sort of process and not having to talk to anyone, that also gets them in and out faster. And then they go back to their 16-hour a day job because they're really hard workers there, from what my tour director was telling me. Like their working culture is insane. Like there's a lot of good sides to every culture and a lot of bad sides. And she's like, for us, it's like our work-life balance is non-existent. Like your vacation is maybe 3 days a year, if anything, or something like that. And so I was like, okay, I can see they're weighing the scales. This is what they prioritize versus like this. So I echo your experience, though I will say, like, I think the places where I've been, everyone's pretty nice. Even though I speak no Japanese and I don't try any anime either. I'm just like, one, please, arigato. Like, yeah. So that's pretty much it. But yeah, I get that.
If your Japanese is just as good as your Tagalog, I got it.
It's literally onegashimasu, ramen, salmon. No, I'm just kidding. Just foods. Actually, my Japanese is pretty much the same as my Tagalog, except for I watch more anime, so I think I have slightly more vocabulary than Tagalog. So yeah.
You know what? You actually bring up a very interesting point that made me sometimes think like, oh, I wonder then sometimes if that's why over here it's more, I would say, apparent that people view like tipping culture as like as a big thing, or like as almost like a necessary thing here because of those things, right? Because like I sometimes I mean, you don't tip in Japan, so it's like what do? You get like that type of service, automation service, you know what I mean? Like everything quick, clean, good to go, but it's very process oriented, centric, great. Or you get someone over here that's going to give you that like hands-on, like, hey, you are my person right here, right now. That I'm going to serve like and make you like the best in your life. By the way, like we start at 20% like tip at the end of the day as well. So again, can't have both ways, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know what's funny too? Like it's true, the whole not tipping culture in like Asia, or I guess Japan and everything. But if you're on a tour, your tour guides will gladly take your tip. Like they know, they're like, yeah, these foreigners, these tourists, they're all about tipping, so we're not going to say no to money. But if you go to like a normal like business that's just catered towards like local, yeah, they're going to look at you weird. Apparently, if you try to tip, they're gonna be like, what is this for drugs, or are you money laundering? Like what's going on? Our tour guide was like, yeah, try not to tip everywhere because it's weird. But if I tell you like, yeah, this is our bus driver tipped them, this tour guide tipped them because it makes sense. But yeah, it's a weird thing.
Next time I should probably take if you have any traveling tips in Japan, please give me your tour guide, because it sounds like I need one to be able to order.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I mean, maybe, okay, like I said, I think for me, it's gonna be like an annual thing. Let's just plan a trip and we can go together and it'll be fun. Like, we'll see, we'll both go to sushi and not talk to each other and then see who has the better experience.
And we'll do our podcast there too, live in
Yeah,
Japan.
exactly. Yeah. I know we talked about this off camera, but I wanted to, well, we were talking about how cultural experience and travel, how it's inherently a good thing. Maybe it'd be preaching to the choir to talk about that, how travel is good for us and don't want to be tone deaf. And, traveling is a privilege to a lot of people, right? Like, not everyone can travel, but I think what we were talking about offline was like, the thing that I get, or the reason why I think travel is important is because it questions your beliefs on what is normal. And like we were saying, that normal for me here, growing up in, let's say, Northern California, is not normal to someone, to stuff that I do is not normal to maybe someone in the East Coast, is maybe not normal to someone in the Philippines or Japan. And I think that's a good thing to be exposed to continuously as much as you can, different cultures, so that you know that your way of doing things isn't necessarily the right way to do things. It is a way to do things, but it's not always the right thing to do. And I think that open-mindedness is always a good thing too, that will serve you. But I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think uh, I'll go one step further. I think people think like, yes, it is a like luxury to be able to travel, but to go one step further, I think sometimes like traveling is a necessity for your own like mental health to actually be able to explore. And just like when you're growing up younger and when you're seeing quote unquote like more of the real world, right? Like experience, like seeing the more of the real world experience like within your same vicinity is actually not like the real world. There's these people that are doing things either complete opposite of what you're doing or what you believe is considered like a non-privilege here or something that you find that's very. I'll give you an example. Growing up, I was born and raised in the Philippines. Like I've been surrounded by like not that I go everywhere
Filipinos?
around it, but I'm so aside from Filipinos, I'm surrounded. Like I've been exposed, I would say, to like ladyboys, to like to Jollibee, like to the yeah. I'll give you another funny story about that. I at one point when I was young, I really thought that everyone was Filipino. It didn't matter what race you were. I just thought everyone was Filipino.
I
Like
love that.
no, and the reason why is because like Filipinos in the Philippines, dude, they come in quite literally all shades. Like there's like
Right, right,
dark
right.
Filipinos and then there's like really, really white Filipinos. So I come over here to the US and like they're talking a different like language, like Spanish, for example, and I just thought it's a different dialect of Filipino. So I just thought everyone was Filipino. Like, oh, you're just a darker Filipino. Like
Nice.
that's how I grew up, right? But again, like over there, there's so many diverse things that was happening. But in my opinion, like no one makes like a big deal out of it in a sense of like it's like everyone it's accepted like easily. Like they know that like Philippines is not like like have blinders that don't understand that ladyboys exist. Like they know they exist and they live there as is. But over here, at least you know what I mean. Like with the progression, it's like it sucks to realize that like people are like fighting for some sort of acknowledgement of these things because there's people that believe that oh that's not a norm, and I'm like thinking to myself like yeah that's a norm to like to others, like to other countries,
Mm.
like very normal type of thing. It's not something that like you feel the need to have to defend like their right for, because their right is already their right as a human person, as a human being. You know what I mean? So again, very like that's why I think like going back to the entire segment, which is I do think that necessary for you to be able to travel and go to different and experience different cultures, because you get to learn so much and realize like sometimes your norm is really not your, you know what I mean? Like a norm is like norm based on what your circle is. Doesn't mean it's norm for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I like that. I would hope that, again, this isn't always a for sure outcome of travel, but I would hope that the more we as people travel and experience different cultures, our capacity for empathy and understanding increases, right? Because we know, like what we're saying, normal is not always normal. It could be very weird to other people and vice versa. And I think it kind of connects to the other thing that we were talking about, which is like something that you've been pondering recently or deeply, conservatism and open-mindedness. But I wanted to go back
Yes.
really quick before that is like, I love your perspective, your childlike perspective of like oh, I thought we were all just Filipinos. That's so sweet because it's like, we are human. Like we're all just different shades and we just speak different languages, but we're all human, right? Like I love that.
Yeah.
That might be the clickbait title for this is Ronnie thinks we're all Filipinos, right? But yeah,
No,
I love that idea
I genuinely like that's exact. I promise you, there was no. I did not understand the concept of like black
of
or like
like different
Mexican
ethnicities, right?
or
Yeah,
different
because you're like,
ethnicities. There was
we're all
none.
just a person. You're all just humans, just different shades, different languages, etc.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I can't understand your dialect. Like, ah, I'm screwed. You know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Like that's what it was. But it's not like I'm out here and being like, oh, like you know, I'm just like, dude, Filipino man. Like you're Filipino. I'm Filipino.
Yeah.
Like we're cool. I can't.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny because it's like if we all just approached each other like we're all Filipinos, right? Like we're all just humans, you know, in like a funny, cute way, like that would actually make the world a better place, you know,
Yeah.
but we're always so like, yeah, no, we're putting each other in boxes. We're different, you know? So I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, now we can go into, I guess, that topic. If you want to go into it, we'll see how far and, you know, if we go off the rails. I don't think we will. But my question was something that you've been pondering recently or often deeply. Did you
Mhm.
have anything you want us to jump off with?
Yes. The biggest thing that I've been pondering recently is that like, as I'm getting older, like, am I like as a young person? I always thought to myself, I'm the most progressive person ever. Like, yeah, like this is the thing. Change these rules now. Like, Kate, like this is how it is. Like, you can't think this way. Like, why? Just because you've done it, like you've done tradition for years and millions of years, like that's gonna happen. And in my head, I'm just like, like, nah, change that up. Like, that's not right. That's clearly not right. And then now I'm on this opposite, I wouldn't say opposite side, but like now I'm on this side where I'm just thinking to myself, like, dude, like, am I catering towards being more conservative? Because it's just like, that's how my view is. Like now, like the question of my perspective has been, is it's like sometimes almost like PTSD type of thing where like my reality is being checked. And, sometimes when your reality is being checked, you have to grab onto something that you consider are factual, like 1 plus 1 equals 2. It would blow your mind to think that 1 plus 1 is not equal to, right? So then like, but you have so many of these things layered up every single year that you get older that like when they pull a piece of that out, it's like stumbling. You're like your baseline of what like reality is like starts swaying, and you're just like, nah, keep it there, keep that piece there. You know what I mean? Like make me stable again, right?
Okay,
Yeah, like
boomer. I'm just kidding.
that's my perspective on that. I was like, to give an example in this specific topic,
Wait, really
right?
quick, before you
Good.
get to that, I love that intro because I can definitely use that as a hook to clickbait people. Is Ronnie going, oh man, I used to be so progressive, but now, and then cuts to the next one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like no,
Like, oh,
definitely.
Ronnie's becoming a Republican just because he makes a little bit more money now. It's like that. Have you seen that Dave Chappelle joke where he's like, "Yeah, the richer I get, the more conservative I become. You know, the more like,
Yeah.
yeah, Republican. You know what I mean? Like that reminds me of that joke. But anyway, sorry. Continue.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, and for me, it's like the biggest example recently that I've had, and again, it's like to each their own. I'm just going to talk about like my sample size and like my experience, right? Which is that like oftentimes like go on social media, you get targeted and maybe it's like rage bait or whatever, but like you get targeted by these things of being like, oh my God, this person like did not even ask. Like I go to a barbershop. Here's the most famous one. I go to a barbershop and they didn't even ask for my pronouns. Like, I, look, as a, again, I'll talk about my experience as a first generation immigrant, right? That have to learn English as a second language. I have been corrected all my life to understand that they, them means more than one person. And so if respectfully, if getting beatings from family, if not getting an A+, you know what I mean? Because you got a low score on English class, or your grammatical error is correct, or your friends are like, actually, it's they hung out together. You know what I mean? Like when you get that, like when you get that embedded in your head, you understand what these rules are. And so now these rules are in your head for you to follow, and so that you never make that mistake again or make a fool out of yourself again. Then you come to learn that certain things, like this is now something that could be used for a singular person. And so, like, for me, I like, it's not even about the risk. It's mainly, it's, if I'm being honest, I think it's PTSD of like, am I wrong to even like to say that or something like that? Because I've been told I've been wrong like all this time. And now you're going to then like refer yourself as a more than one person. And then I'm like, I don't know what to do. And this also comes from being a Filipino background, where like everything and everyone is a masculine and feminine, like, what do you call this, like, thing, that it's like everyone greets himself as mom, sir, or you know what I mean, like for the longest time, right? So it's like the view of again, the experience that I have of like feeling that you might get in trouble for saying something that's like that ultimately comes out wrong, even if you don't mean to, right? That's what I'm just thinking to myself, like, huh, like, is it better to be conservative sometimes?
You're like, look, if I'm just conservative and Republican, I can say the wrong pronoun and no one's gonna say it. They're gonna be like, oh, he's just a little racist, whatever. He's just conservative. Ronnie, now that he's conservative, we can just let it slide. But if he says he's an ally, we're gonna hold him down to that.
We're gonna berate you for like, you're an
That's
ally,
funny.
but you don't know what, you know what I mean, that I refer to as, you know, I'm just like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so I guess let me jump in with like even more context, I guess, for the audience. So there's a few parts of this, right? So again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't speak Tagalog, but I know even like with Blessy and all my family, like they have problems or trouble or issues with like pronouns, right? Like he, she, they. Like I have my mom always be like, oh, she, and it's like she's referring to a he, but it's because like they don't really use pronouns, right? And that's why places like Jollibee, it's just mamser, because they're just trying to, get it all in one, and they're not trying to offend anybody. So there's that aspect. It's like the language cultural sort of thing that's different and makes it obviously more difficult for someone like first generation. But also, like you're saying now, from a grammatical, I'm trying to learn English, and like what Ronnie is saying, my whole life growing up, I was told in order to get an A in English, I need to know that they, them is a plural. Whereas now, if they, them is now an acceptable usage of a singular pronoun, like me, I am a they, them, then yeah, I totally understand what Ronnie's saying is like, but that's confusing to me because now 1 + 1 is 3. Like, what do you, I got in trouble for not knowing that. And now it's like the rules are switched. And I guess the third thing now that I agree with is, yeah, I think as we get older, we start to get more, I think everyone will have this experience. If you haven't had it yet, you're not old enough, but is that we obviously get more comfortable with how we've done things, right? And not to say that you shouldn't always have empathy and be open-minded, like we're just talking about travel and being open-minded. But I do understand that my grandparents and older people, for example, are more used to and more, it's easier for them to be like, well, this is how we've always talked and done things, and we're not trying to be rude or mean, but this is just the way it is. And I think that's why there is a clear sort of age distinction when it comes to, let's say, politics. Conservative and progressive is, conservatives tend to be older and progressives tend to be younger, is exactly a biological thing that I've heard or learned. And that makes sense to me, right? Like maybe as we get older, we do get more conservative, not because we're trying to have less empathy, but just because like our brain is now being trained to recognize patterns and go through the world with those patterns in mind, knowing that those patterns have served us for 30, 40 years, right? And if we try to change those patterns, our brain's going to tell us like, oh no, that's danger. You should do what's safe and what you're familiar with. So my takeaway, and I'll ask for your thoughts after this, is like, maybe we just have more empathy even for old conservative people like Ronnie, you know? Like if Ronnie uses the wrong pronouns, you know, he's just traumatized because he got beat for not getting an A in English, and he's also he speaks Tagalog in his head, so just cut him some slack, man.
Here's another clickbait title for you. Filipinos are the most progressive culture in
There's so
this entire. Okay, here's my last top off in this certain topic, which is it comes from intention. I think at the end of the day, it's like if your intention is to actually berate someone or to mispronounce them or things of that nature, that is a clear problem. But when you're doing it because of the fact that I think of this in terms of computers, I would say it's like your central processing unit, you're continuously doing things that are repetitive, that it's stored in the back of your head, so that everything is by default, naturally. When you're driving a car, you're no longer thinking, oh, do I press the gas first or brake when you know what I mean? When you've done years of driving. But when you're starting, you're just oh, do I step on this gas just a little bit more and things of that nature? And you're trying to figure that out. So everything becomes a subconscious. Now, when you're trying to take that out of your subconscious and then break it, where the brake pad, you're driving on the left lane now because you're in a different area, it takes time to register and pre-register. And sometimes you might still drive in the opposite lane and you know what I mean? And get a siren. But that's really what it is. And just like you said, I think ultimately it's when you have empathy or when you acknowledge that this happens and it's not out of maliciousness, I think that it it's okay to be that way. So yeah, that was we're all Filipinos at the end of the day.
We're all Filipinos, and we're all they thems. We are they and them. we are they. We are them.
We are they and we are them. Yeah.
Cool. All right, that is it for all the topics that I have. I know you had a few questions, but do you have anything else you wanted to ask or topics to bring up?
Yeah. I mean, we sort of touched on to this actually when it comes to you traveling in Japan. But I guess my question to you, because I'll tell you my stance. My stance is that, and I'm sure you share the same sentiment, is that traveling is actually a genuine need for your own mental health and self-care, and you progress and you grow a lot more as a person. My question to you now is what other things have you done recently that, quote unquote, do take care of yourself?
So just how do I do self-care?
How do you take care of yourself? Yep.
Yeah. I get massages and I buy Louis Vuitton purses, and I treat myself out to expensive luxury goods every weekend.
And sushi.
And sushi, yeah, and sushi. Especially in Japan. So I just fly to Japan as much as often so I can save money on food. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. So for the audience, this was prompted by kind of an idea that I had, I think, which is fake versus real self-care. I saw this on maybe social media or somewhere where it's oh, self-care, I'm getting a manicure, pedicure, or I'm getting a massage or a luxury stuff. And, those things, I'm not judging anyone, right? You spend money on things, but I think to me, what's important is to understand the distinction between self-care and luxury lifestyle decisions when you spend your money and your time and everything like that. If you want to spend on luxury items and that makes you happy, that's great. But I think self-care, if you want to identify that as the thing that will actually rejuvenate you, help you recover and to decompress when you do have a lot of things going on, are things that take care of your future self. And so a purse is not going to take care of your future self. It's just an impulse buy, or it's just a buy to make you feel good. Sure. But that's not self-care to me. I define self-care as all the health stuff, sleeping 8 hours a day, working out several times per week, eating healthy, hydrating, cultivating your relationships, taking care of your finances. I think self-care is everything that allows you to be your best self for the longest amount of time. And I think that's thinking more long-term rather than the short-term. And I think I even would make the argument that buying that sort of Louis Vuitton purse is very short-term, because I don't know if that would actually serve you long-term. Again, you can make the arguments for all the spending stuff, but I think that's just my main point, is that I think if you're in that place where you do need to decompress and you feel like you want to do self-care, don't be swept up in all the social media self-care because that's not self-care. Self-care is like the daily disciplines, the things that you do because you know that your future self will benefit from it in the long term. So, don't know if you had any thoughts on
Ooh,
that, but
yeah. Would you say that social media right now is catered towards using that as a short-term like self-care approach, like the way that it's being like put out there in front of your face? Therefore, do you think that do you think cleansing from social media is a good self-care or not? Do you think staying away from 1000 gurus on Instagram and
okay.
podcasts is a good?
Okay, well, I know you're trying to throw a weird curveball here, but like my stance publicly on this show has always been I'm trying to get off social media.
Oh,
Unfortunately, to build a channel, you need to throw shit online, and so that's why I'm still on Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff, but I don't want to be. And having detoxed this entire year from like now I've deactivated my personal IG and my dance IG in the attempt and the intention to have less social media. So, yes, I am on the less social media train. And to answer the first question, which is, yeah, I think social media is part of our sort of capitalistic consumerist value society, right? And I think it wants our attention, but it also wants us to buy shit. And in order for us to buy shit, it needs to make us feel unwhole and needing something, and a purchase will make us feel whole. And so, of course, ads and consumerism and capitalism is always going to be catered towards making us feel like we need to spend our money in order to feel better about ourselves. So yes, 100%. Like I think everything that you actually need to make yourself feel better is found in nature. It's found in real community and relationships. It's found in taking care of your health. It's found in your mental health and well-being and not in buying stuff. I think that's the biggest. Obviously, you can make arguments for certain things that you buy that'll actually help out your life, but I think most things out there are not good buys, especially if you see an ad for it, probably not a good buy. But have you seen an ad for going for a walk at the park? No. And so that's kind of like my whole point. Does that answer your
First of
question?
all, yeah, no, that does. First of all, I wasn't even trying to throw a curveball. I didn't realize
I
that,
know.
but I agree with the same stance as you.
Mm.
I definitely did not know that like you were quitting because I feel the same way. Like there was a period in time where I straight up did not look at Instagram or anything of that like that nature, and I felt even lonelier the minute I looked at my Instagram and saw that someone had the coolest new phone. I'm just like thinking as like, well, now I gotta have one
Yeah,
or things
now
of
I
that
feel like
nature. It's
shit,
just
and now I need to buy an iPhone. Yeah.
yeah, like oh now everyone has the orange color. You know what I mean? Like black is not cool now or whatever. So I do agree with that. And yeah, man, I try to stay away as much as possible, like myself. Second question that I actually wanted to have, and this one is very close to home for me, which is this is sort of what we talked about like before the topic, but I actually wanted to get deeper into this. It's the stance on specifically identifying. It's not like who, it's like how do you identify like friends that use it of like we were in the topic specifically of like friends of utility versus friends of virtue. How do you spot one? Like how do you spot one and how do you identify it like immediately right away? And or what are some signs that you think that it's one way, but it's actually a different way in terms of how like you identify that from like a friend's perspective. Sometimes it's
Mm.
hard. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like a cloak in disguise, and until you realize, or I guess like pattern recognition that you see that you're just like, oh, like maybe he's only here or he or she is only here for the good times. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, yeah.
That's a good question and interesting. I guess my follow-up question or retort is like, are you saying that there are friends who will intentionally masquerade as one and actually be another one? Or are you saying like it's just hard to discern clearly the role between or the distinction between like friends of virtue or pleasure or utility?
I think that sometimes it can be convoluted. It could be like a mixture of both, but then like you as time goes on, it becomes like more clear.
So I'll answer your question, but I also want to say another caveat is I think just based on what you said, I feel like there are friends who can be in multiple roles and or be like hybrids, right? Like maybe I do have a friend of virtue, but also is a friend of utility or pleasure, because I feel like, in my opinion, I don't think it's mutually exclusive, but I do think that there are friends who will lean more heavily in one of those three categories, maybe. And is that what you're trying to ask?
Exactly. Yeah. Or like be more aware of, because some, the truth is you don't think about these things until like later on in life,
Yeah.
and then you come to a realization like, who are my actual 5 people or like 10 people in my head that I would be able to talk to and call, and I know for a fact that, you know what I mean, it's like that type of thing, right?
Yeah. This is a great question because I've felt a certain way about this topic for a long time, and it was only recently where I've slightly shifted my perspective. And I think you'll understand and agree, I guess, when I get there. But okay, so I think the easiest way to identify is first, okay, so I learned this in like humanities core back in freshman year, but I think the three types of friends or whatever relationships are virtue, pleasure, and utility. And for the audience, pleasure is like friends that are there, good time. It's kind of self-explanatory, right? Like for enjoyment, just enjoyment, and in some sort of sense. Utility is usefulness, and that could be like, let's say, a girlfriend who's just using you for your money or something. That's an extreme example, right? But if you dial it back, it's just utility, meaning like, oh yeah, I have these friends because, they know this and it's helpful. And then, in return, we reciprocate. So it's not any negative way, but it's like, okay, we're definitely friends of utility. And again, it's not mutually exclusive and it can be mixes. But a friend of virtue is a thing that piqued my curiosity because that is a friend who inspires you to be a better version of yourself. And so it's a friend that is like, brings out the virtue in you because they make you want to be better. And it's not them telling you to be better, but it's because of that. And how I identify those people are the friends who keep you accountable to be the best version of yourself or I guess because of that, I aspire to be as much as I can a friend of virtue, meaning that a friend that keeps you accountable to be the best version of yourself. And the problem I run into is that not every friend of mine wants me to be their friend of virtue. And I have to understand that with the maturity is that some of them just want to hang out with me because pleasure, because we have a good time together, right? Or I am useful to them in terms of I give them knowledge or vice versa. And they don't necessarily want me to make them a better person. And that's where I've fallen into the trap of thinking that I should be a friend of virtue to everyone. Even though
Mm.
there's huge value out of being a friend of virtue, because if we surround ourselves with virtuous friends, a rising tide lifts all ships. But I realize that it is also totally okay just to have a friend of pleasure, meaning a friend of mine told me this too, but it's like, it's cool to have friends that we don't need anything from each other. We just like to hang out because we like spending time with each other and that's it. And that's also a very freeing friendship. And some would say that is a friendship of virtue, but we get into semantics, but I totally understand that. And also, it is totally fine to have friends of utility as well because we're all helping each other out. And that is technically utility, but it is not like a negative utility. And so that's where my thoughts have evolved over time is I thought it was a hierarchy of like worst, better, best, but it's actually different types. And you can still have productive, good, healthy relationships with all three types. But now going back to your point, how do you identify those? I think it's based on actions. I think you can have those conversations with people like, hey, I'm here to be your friend to like, where we got each other's backs. We're going to help each other be better people. Sometimes, implicitly, like we just vacation together or we just like to F around and have fun or play video games or yeah, we're doing something and we help each other out. Like, I think it's good to identify. I think if you have this lens of these three types of friends and the distinctions between them, I think now as an audience member, you can kind of now see with a better lens what type of role your friends play. And, you don't need to put a judgmental lens on that, I guess. But it's good to identify it and then maybe lean into it and understand the expectations on both sides. Because if one person expects one thing different from the other person, that's where you come up with problems. But if you align on expectations in any relationship, that's where you'll get a good cohesive friendship.
I definitely agree. And I will say that similar to you, there came a point, and that was a learning experience for me, that sometimes, just like you said, not everyone wants to get lifted. Like, I mean, like it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to say. And like, maybe that puts you in a very like egoist like perspective of like, I want to be that person so that we could all be like better type of thing. And yeah, sometimes it stems like from that, even if it means just like wanting like the best for the person. But it's again, it's like understanding and accepting like sometimes that this is where their stance is on certain things, and acknowledging that like that's the type of friendship that like that you would have with them, whether that's like good or bad in your eyes. I used to think the same way. If there comes a point where like my friendship, you don't serve me, like you don't serve me, or we don't uplift each other as this thing, then it is like useless. It's not gonna make me like I'm not gonna be a millionaire like by that point. Like newsflash, still not a millionaire, and
Yeah.
but the journey, at least like the journey of that is sometimes it like when it becomes the opposite way around. Also, it's kind of very interesting where it's like when I see a person of just pleasure, like friends of pleasure, and then they see me then as like a friend of like utility, and you're just like, hold on a second, like I'm happy to be able to do that, but I am not going to, it's that's what I'm saying. But sometimes it's like identifying all of those things, because sometimes it's true. Sometimes they're like the unfortunate truth is like things are like sneaky. Like sometimes people are only there for the good times, and without understanding or realizing that the other person is like going through the bad too.
Yeah. I think now this is making me think of, okay, so now we've talked about the three types of friends, I guess, but I think it's very interesting. Another dimension of this is friends that you're around during the good times and friends who you can rely on for the tough times, and vice versa, I guess, when you play those roles. Because I feel like we want to think of it as, and there's another idea, besties, right? Best friends. But then you have friends who you never need to talk to, but then you kind of can just catch up like nothing ever happened. And then you have more surface level friends, like you just by volume, you hang out with them a lot, but they're not necessarily a best friend, nor are they a friend you rely on, or like friends who like you can just are low maintenance, so you can just catch up with them 10 years later. I don't really have a cohesive thought here, but I'm just thinking of like now different types of friends and how they serve different roles, but how sometimes maybe the human thing is we all desire connection. I guess we can start with that. And so it's nice to be able to have those friends you feel like you can rely on, but sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. Sometimes people change, and sometimes people are not friends of virtue and they are just friends of pleasure, like you were saying before. And then it's maybe identifying like who your quote unquote real friends are, but then how do you define friendship at that point? Because we just defined 10 different types of friends just now. Do you have any thoughts on that? I'm just kind of bored vomiting.
I'll start off with saying this. I think that when it comes to different types of like friendships, like I don't think that there's any form of fake friendship from someone that comes from like a friend of pleasure. You have a good time with this person. It doesn't mean that that's fake because of the fact that you feel like it's someone that you could like look up to in terms of like virtue. It's a different form of friendship. It all comes from like how do I feel about it, right? At the end of the day, it's like, do you give them power? It's an acknowledgement and an awareness, so that like you are more aware of the people you seek at certain times when you need it. The reason why I don't think that there's a hierarchy between a friend of virtue, a friend of utility, and a friend of like pleasure is because I think that every single one of them is needed at some point. You get to understand who you can lean on at times that you need a certain type of friendship.
I like that. It's crazy. Okay, well, that I don't have any other thoughts. I think that was great. I think we wrapped up everything. But as you were talking, let me just throw it out there and see if you're interested. So I was reading this book called I Don't Want to Talk About It by Terrence Real. Have you ever heard of it or the author?
I have not, but please share, because I'd love to be able to like learn more. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Okay, so basically he's like a mental health counselor, maybe psychotherapist or something like that. But the entire thing is focused on male-centered covert depression. He defines it first off as overt depression is kind of like what we see. It's the thing that you need to get medicated for. It can be like very extreme and intense. Covert depression is the subtle thing that kind of lingers in the background chronically. And usually people self-medicate or lean on addictions to kind of get them through. But it's something that when it's unaddressed chronically, it can resurface in people's relationships, family relationships, etc. And now the author says that the reason why men tend to have more covert depression more often and higher rates is because of the socialization of boys to men, basically, of boys going in through boyhood into manhood, of how our society, even though all people want human connection regardless, but in society, men are typically taught to get that connection, social connection, through our achievements, and how we are valued as a person is based on those achievements. And in order to achieve those things, I'm simplifying it. So guys, check out the book or check out my book summary, which should be live by now. But basically that So in order to have achievements, you have to go through this sort of sport of domination, and the skills needed to win and to be dominant in society are skills that typically make you to remove compassion and connection and empathy and community, right? And I think what he's saying is, again, society gender norms is that women are more accepting or encouraged to be connecting and have a community and to be vulnerable and open up. Whereas for boys or men, it is less, it's more frowned upon to do that. We're more taught to be self-reliant and to be kind of like the head of household and to dominate and control all this other stuff, right? And so, and it's perpetuated by other men to boys or men to other men, or et cetera. And so what we have is an epidemic of men basically who were socialized in order to be less community oriented, empathetic, compassionate, vulnerable, opening up to people. And that's why they have higher rates of covert depressions, because they've been trained to not be able to deal with this. And there's a lot of different factors, and I'm kind of simplifying the main points that I remember. And it made a lot of sense to me when we're talking about friendships, because like even for me, like I'll admit that I when I was reading this book and I'm listening to it, I'm like, wait, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I fully have had this experience before, because it feels like, in a generalization, that my value does come from my achievements and being reliable and independent and self-sufficient. And my background and upbringing also compounds onto that sort of value system. So for me, I highly value independence and self-sufficiency. Now, the dark side of that, which I think I'm also susceptible to, is that I have a harder time opening up to people and being vulnerable because I've been trained not to do so, right? And that will obviously lead to more levels of kind of bottling it in and not having a support system. And so now we're bringing it back to friendships. One of the things for me this upcoming year that I want to do more, now that I've read this book, is to open up more and to try to find opportunities to be vulnerable with people that I really do trust. And not just anyone, not just friends of this and that, but specifically friends of virtue, but also specifically friends who I can rely on, who are trustworthy. Because for me, trust is a big thing. I think I tend to be on the more less trusting side. And so therefore, again, the whole self-sufficiency thing. And so that's one of my goals for this upcoming year, is to be as vulnerable as I can, to open up to as many people who I trust as I can, because I don't want to lead myself into that sort of that path of being covertly depressed in the long term and having that bottle up and taking it out on my family in the future. Because I know that if I go on this current route of self-sufficiency, while yes, I can be productive in my own bottled up need to be ambitious and achieve, I know that there's the dark side to that. And I want to mitigate that by, still cultivating those relationships and not trying to keep everything in, if that makes sense. So long-winded spiel. If you have any thoughts, please.
Yeah, no, I think I want to actually add on to that. And I think similar for me specifically, like that was sort of, I wouldn't say that was like my point of view, but I think that was a good, somewhat summary of like my dating experience. And what I mean by that, or like my lack of dating experience. Like I've similar to you in a sense of like relying on achievement, self-sufficiency and things of that nature. I've always told, because of either the compassion that I've lacked from these things, or just in general, because, or sometimes maybe my innate like understanding that like I feel like I haven't achieved enough. To me, it feels much easier to like either bottle things in or like put myself in a position where I want to just be like independent and try to reach for something, right? And then it goes back to like, I guess it's my own thoughts, like, had I put myself in a position where I either opened up more or let myself like be able to be like vulnerable like other people who've gotten into relationships, would I have achieved the same amount of things that I have? You know what I mean? Versus if I had gone through this like independent like way of going through things, like to just reach to the top, like the highest. So I think it's definitely far more than just like regular friendships. I think it has everything to do with just like in general relationships that's like built or not being built because of, I guess, like the thought process of like how we are expected as a society to be able to achieve in life. Right. So yeah, that was my like food for thought, at least when I was thinking, like when you're talking about that, like, still single, guys. It's been 67 episodes. You know what I mean? So applications are also available. The link is in the description below. Find your boyfriend, find Rani.com. You know what
This
I
is like
mean?
one of those like friend auctions, like in those Facebook groups before.
No,
But this is
no.
this is my friend auction on my podcast.
Yes, please, please. We'll learn how to speak Japanese if needed.
I was
Yeah.
gonna ask like we can cut this out, but I was gonna ask like, so how's the love life? That was one of my intro topics, but I guess you answered that question.
No, I mean, yeah. I think for me, I've definitely put myself in a position where I will say that I'm open to certain things. At the same time, it's like with everything else, it's just opportunity cost. And it's like plants grow where you water them daily. And right now, the thing that I'm nourishing and trying to water daily is like me getting a job in software engineer or me like being better so that I could like move forward. Right. So as of right now, sort of it's a dead plant, like, not even waiting to get watered. But if there was a person who's to give me seeds to water them, like obviously open to.
The last two questions, I guess, is one. So it's currently not a priority, you're saying, and if it comes your way, then great. Or are there things that you're doing in order to go in that direction?
First question, in the sense of whether something is a priority or not priority, if we were to just label it like that, black and white, I would
Yeah.
say it's not a priority. In terms of, because that means that I'm actively doing something in order for that thing to happen. But the thing is that it's just not in my general conscious of thinking about that. There's times where you think about it during like the holidays when everyone is like all like lovey-dovey, things of that nature. You're just like, oh, you know, would be nice. But I like the only person to blame is like essentially like myself in terms of like understanding that like, yeah, I didn't put a priority on it. If I put in the same effort as me getting a job in software engineer, I'm sure I'll get lucky sometime, like someday.
7 months. So is there?
So, 7 months.
Do you feel like it's going to be a priority anytime soon?
I do think so. I do think that I'm getting to that point where like I am going to put like an honest and prioritize it as something that like has learned how to juggle a lot of things. I think that this is something that like I would want to put in like my honest effort on. So
Sorry,
yeah,
did you say a time period? I'm curious.
time period. Well, this thing is gonna come out in March, so
Yeah.
you know what? Beginning of this year, and then
Okay.
I'll add on the comment section whether or not I achieved that or not.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. I was gonna say because I'm like, what if someone is out there like, Ronnie's a catch, but he's not even open right now. It's not a priority, so maybe I should just wait. So I want to ask you, Ronnie, for anyone who is potentially interested in being a partner or dating you in the future, what are your red flags? Like, okay, hey, I know I'm great, but here's like my red flags, like just to be transparent, right? And so I can give my example if you want me to go first.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to be able to know what your red flags are.
Yeah. So my red flag is that like in a relationship or even dating, I think it's more of when I get into a long-term serious relationship is that I have very high standards, meaning that you know me, and like I'm very hard charging, ambitious, disciplined, and I set goals and I do them. And for me, if they're my friends or people I just met, I would never hold them to that sort of standard. But my red flag is that when I tend to have a partner, I kind of see them as my other half. And so I unfairly, unsubconsciously kind of put those same standards onto them. Like I expect them to also care about, let's say, fitness or nutrition or finance or career or be just as ambitious and have all these goals and dreams. But because I'm aware of that, I always have to actively push back against that, knowing because I know that that's not a healthy way to look at my relationship or my partner, because it's very toxic to say, yeah, I love and accept you if you can perform as well as I do, right? So no one wants to have a relationship like that. So I understand that. And I have to kind of like, okay, what's important here is that I love and accept them as they are and believe in their best self that they can achieve whatever that goal is, and vice versa. That's all I want from my partner, is to also love and accept me as I am, because I'm also flawed and not perfect, and to also believe in my best self and to like champion my goals and dreams, right? So I think that's like my red flag, and hopefully that makes sense. So I don't know. Do you have one, Ronnie?
I do. Aside from your red flag, because that's also my red flag as well.
Boo, you just took my
No,
answer,
no, no,
man.
no. But no, I'm saying
So we should
that.
date then, because we both have high standards.
Yeah, exactly. And your standards are my standards, and my
Yeah,
standards are
and
your
you're
standards.
Filipino, I'm Filipino, you know.
Yeah, we're all Filipinos.
Perfect.
Um, I think I would say that a red flag that I see myself having is because of the fact that I've been independent for most of my time. When something is difficult, something is bothering me, I tend to be independent and I would be quiet. I would not be communicating that something is wrong. I wait until I've resolved it to then communicate it. But sometimes like people want to know what you're going through, or at the very least, why is it that you are like quiet? And so for me, it's one of those things that like sometimes I think it's easier for me to just deal with it so that when I do come to you and when I do talk, it's coming from a sense of I've already fixed it or I already know what I have done, as opposed to, I guess, show that sign of weakness as if I need help type of thing. Because most of the time, if I am going through things, it's like I already know what to do. I just need to get it done. So I know in a relationship, communication is like a big thing. It is a big deal to be able to talk to your partners. So it's not out of like malicious like intent of not wanting you to be like part of my life. It's mainly because that's how it's essentially been, that I would rather like have dealt with it independently and then talk to you like afterwards, rather than feeling like I'm sharing the burden, because to me it feels bad.
Yeah. I feel like I've said the exact same thing verbatim multiple times to like friends as well. Like I handle it the same way. And it kind of just reminded me like, yeah, we are like Filipino Aries brothers twins, because that's like we think the same way.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Cool. All right. I think that is it. Is there any other last thoughts you had before we wind to a close?
Yeah. First of all, I will say it's always a pleasure like being here. I love your podcast and I always support you. If I'm being honest, I have not thought of like our like friendship dynamic, because I think that if I was to spend time on it, I think that we are a huge sponge of all those things combined, of whether it's like virtue, like pleasure, and or like utility. And I hope you feel the same way, that you could come to me at like at any point. And yeah, super excited. I'm so glad that this is reaching its 68th, and you know, sooner enough it's going to be its 100th episode plus more, and can't wait for it to grow even more. And now I'm going to be here on the 168th episode coming soon. So anyways,
Definitely.
that's pretty much it. Again, if you guys want to hear more topics about this or feedback to me, because I'm obviously going to come back again in this podcast and wreck things up, please leave a comment, a like, a subscription down below, along with your full name, your astrology sign, your and all of those things. I take those into consideration. Yeah. So
Thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for being a huge supporter. You've been here since day one for a good reason, right? Like I definitely wanted a close friend of mine who I think we vibe well with as the starter of my show. So I'm happy and grateful to have you back. And hopefully you had fun. I had tons of fun with this recording, and especially we can do it remotely too. So yeah, I echo all of that. Again, I echo the other thing too, which is like, you know, I think we're good friends, and I see you the same way. It's always nice to have people like Rani in your life to keep you accountable, to help you be a better person, but also to have fun and to like learn from. So just want to echo that back to you. So thank you so much for that. Okay, yeah. So I'll wrap it up then. So thank you for already giving the plug to the audience. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Be sure to like, follow, comment, subscribe. If you're single and in the market for a sexy Filipino dude who gets pronouns wrong and is slowly becoming conservative, definitely reach out to Ronnie. He's a good dude. I vouch for him. And yeah, leave us love in the comments. 5 stars, all that good stuff. Final reminder, my brain farting, haven't done this in a while. Be kind to other people, especially yourself, and remember that you can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thank you guys for being here.
Absolutely. We're all Filipino.